risk of heart disease, according to new research published in Heart magazine. The risk varies from group to group, but doctors involved in the study say that the risk factors for these conditions can be modified. In a moment, I'm going to be talking to the doctor who led that research. First, Karen Bauman has this report.
Eucall Jones discovered he had hypertension or high blood pressure during a routine check. Research suggests it's a condition which is up to 4 times more common among ethnic groups than white people, possibly because they're more susceptible to salt. Hypertension also has no symptoms until it causes strokes or serious heart problems.
You start to worry, and you say to yourself, no, what's going to happen here? You know, am I going to probably wake up one morning and find that I can't speak or whatever, or, you know, have even worse, probably a heart attack or something.
That fear prompted a complete change in lifestyle and diet. But the times when you thought, oh, I really can't be bothered with this.
That is true. I did say that once or twice, but then I realised that the benefits were there, and I began to feel a lot better. And in a lot of cases then, after consulting my doctor at different times, my tablets then was reduced from what they were to what they are now.
Cooking has now become one of Eucall's favourite pastimes. A diet of fresh vegetables, fish and no drink might seem unexciting to some, but it's made Eucall's a success story. A case which backs up research that the risk of premature heart disease is surprisingly high among people of Caribbean or Asian descent, but one which also proves that certain conditions can be effectively treated.
I go around with people that doesn't have any high blood pressure, and they wouldn't know the difference whether they have or haven't. So it isn't something that to be dreaded, it's just something once you know you've got it, to look forward to get it under control and keep it under control.
Karen Bauman, BBC News, South London.
And with me to discuss those findings is Dr. Francesco Cappuccio, who conducted the research. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
First of all, why? I mean, what is it among people from ethnic minorities that seems to be laying them open to a greater risk of heart disease than the rest of us?
Yes, our survey in South London clearly shows that hypertension and diabetes are far more common amongst ethnic minorities, particularly hypertension amongst people of African descent, both from the Caribbean and from West Africa, whereas diabetes is far more common among South Asian communities in South London.
And is this something genetic? Is it something caused by the environment? What is it?
So obviously it might be that the underlying genetic background might play a role in making these groups more susceptible to heart disease. However, a number of modifiable factors may reduce that risk if changed in them.
Right, so in other words, there are things in their behaviour, in the way they eat and exercise and things like that, that they can do that they're not doing.
Exactly. In particular, hypertension is the most important factor leading to stroke, and stroke is the commonest cause of death amongst people of African descent. And the high salt intake is the major factor which leads to high blood pressure. Therefore, a reduction in salt intake would reduce blood pressure, thereby reducing the risk of having a stroke.
So we're talking about the kind of foods there that people often have eaten for generations and generations and not thought that they were suffering from. And suddenly you're saying, are you, that people should eat differently?
Yes, in fact, reducing salt intake to a moderate amount has been shown in many different studies to reduce blood pressure substantially. What is believed to happen in people of African descent, they're particularly sensitive to this effect in both ways. In other words, for the same amount of salt, the blood pressure will be much higher. On the other hand, if they moderately reduce their sodium intake, they would have a greatest fall in blood pressure, so the greatest benefit.
Now, the difficulty, of course, is always getting messages across to people, doesn't matter what group they come from. But in terms of getting the message across to people in ethnic minorities who are at risk, at the moment you're saying we're not doing enough.
Well, I think it's important that awareness amongst the groups is increased. We also found that, for instance, the level of detection and appropriate management varies by ethnic groups, so which means not only the public has to be made aware, but also perhaps the medical profession should be made more aware that some groups are at a higher risk, so an early detection is far more important and an effective treatment should be offered at an early stage.
It's not just the potential patients then, it's also the medical community that's got to seek it out.
Exactly.
Now,
Yes.
if they do that, we are talking about saving a considerable number of lives then.
We are talking about coronary heart disease being the leading cause of death in this country in mainly British white population, and the ethnic minority population is going to increase over the next 20 years. A stroke is the most important cause of death in African Caribbean communities. So in other words, we're talking about a substantial number of deaths over a period of time.
Dr. Pucci, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.